It's interesting that we keep getting these reports with a lot of statements such as a minimal increase in costs and so forth, but we never get any figures as to what those costs might be. But going through this report that we have in front of us, there are a lot of things in here that I find unusual. First of all, we have a statement in here that smaller decentralized plants would produce sludge, and they don't deal with it. Well, of course they don't. I mean, the central plant produces sludge and doesn't deal with it. And that's why you're in a situation with perhaps an unfortunate choice of representative technologies where you have to spend $265 million to have a sludge treatment facility out potentially at Heartland Road because you can't find any other site, and you have to build a 17-kilometer pipeline. This report, when it talks about costs, doesn't seem to mention some of the reductions that have taken place in technologies such as MBR technology. A major producer in Japan last year announced the ability to reduce the energy needed to backwash, which is the primary energy used in it, by 70%, and expected a 30% reduction in overall use in the technology in a plant. The technology is a result of that. The replacement of the bioreactors in Dockside Green initially was indicated to be $96,000. GE has recently indicated that will reduce to $48,000, cut in half. But it also doesn't talk about the costs of pumping, of maintaining pump stations all around the region and things of that nature, or energy use therein. It doesn't, of course, sludge would have to be treated. You would probably get somewhat more sludge because you're creating a cleaner effluent. But that's, if you use that appropriately as a resource, that might be less of a problem. It talks about the fact of putting things in lower density neighborhoods. That's a non sequitur. Nobody would do that. It makes no sense. You would place plants, if you were going to do them, at points of intersection where you get the effluent from lower density neighborhoods and can use them in a place where it is more appropriate. For example, the District of Saanich has zoned Tillicum Mall for some high density development. That has not yet occurred given the market conditions, but it will. There will be more density on the mall, and there will probably be more density around it. That would be an opportunity to use considerable heat from sewage in that area, and from the mall, of course, and the density on it. But you would also have the opportunity to flow the sewage from surrounding neighborhoods to the mall and functionally use a lot of the heat at the mall. It's probably heat the entire mall and probably quite possibly heat the entire density in that area. Yes, you can use a heat pump. I use them in my own home, split heat pumps. But the energy required to use them isn't a resource recovery energy. It's an energy, and it's efficient, and that's why I use them. But it's an energy that is required to be created from our electrical power grid. That's a completely different thing. So if you did a decentralized system, and I don't know that that would be the right answer, but you would not build it in low-density neighborhoods. You would create a system that flowed to certain decentralized plants in idealized locations, obviously. Obviously, in water reuse is something that you would do where it was economically viable. Nobody's going to run around tearing down walls and houses. That's an inappropriate point to make, really. If you ever did use it in a residential neighborhood, existing residential neighborhood, of course you wouldn't use it in homes. You would use it outside the homes to water landscape. That's how you would use it. You're not going to go into houses and tear down walls and things of that nature. That's just Not appropriate to make that kind of statement, because it's not a use that anybody would ever countenance. It has already been pointed out by members of the public that with pumping stations and other things, we own a lot of land around this region. What we are having a problem right now with biosolids is finding very large sites because of the representative technology we have taken. What we've had the problem with McLaughlin is finding a very large site. So we don't even have a site that's large enough to accommodate the biosolids. There has been no analysis of whether or not we could find a number of smaller sites. Quite possibly we own them, or we own a fair number of them already. One of the things that isn't been analyzed in this very well, and there's been mentioned the study that was done in 2009, I believe, of a distributed system. I'm not very comfortable with some of the financial figures in that study, but one of the things that hasn't been highlighted here was that that study indicated that a decentralized system, moderately decentralized, medium level of decentralization, would have a 500% better result in GHG reduction. Climate change is the largest single problem we face. Anytime you're spending the better part of $1 billion, you would expect to maximize, in this day and age, the climate change reduction of GHGs that you're able to accomplish. Certainly you expect it. Madam Chair, I'm within the time that I'm allotted.
My law says 15 minutes. So.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. This project has presumably been mandated for environmental concerns. We are dealing with secondary treatment that in reality will do not much more than what has currently been done by the ocean. It would be reasonable to expect that we would build it around resource recovery and maximize environmental gains. This is not even mentioned in here. The fact that you can get a higher level of effluent quality in tertiary, and if you're going to compare things, then give us an estimate of what a tertiary treatment with a centralized plant would cost and make that comparison. But I'm just going to make one final comment, and that is we have had from a number of times reports from people that are clearly committed to this system, and I understand their commitment. They've worked at it, hard at it for a long period of time, saying that, well, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and this is better than another system would be. Well, if you really believe that, then subject this to the test of an independent evaluation of people who are not just engineers, but are experts in urban sustainability and environmental gain from these kinds of things. And secondly, run a second request for expressions of interest in parallel at the same time to see what the best and brightest ideas come forward. That has been requested by myself and others numerous times over the last number of years, and has always been denied. Well, as long as you don't do that due diligence, you will always be suspect in what you say. If you did that due diligence, and it came out that, in fact, what you're doing is truly the best thing, so be it. That's the end of any criticism I have. And go ahead and do it. But the constant and continual refusal to do that doesn't lend credibility to this project. Thank you.